Hello and welcome to the Inspire Life podcast. My name is Michael. I am your producer and co-host, and today I'm really excited to bring you an interview that I did with Ann Blackburn of Tula Yoga and Wellness. Ann is a certified yoga therapist, and she's been practicing yoga for over 35 years, and she's going to explain what yoga means to her, what practice is like at Tula, and how yoga therapy is an option that can help a lot of people when it comes to innate healing abilities and rhythms. Before we jump into our episode, let's hear a word from one of our sponsors. This episode of the Inspire Life podcast is brought to you by Inspire Health Coaching, helping busy professionals overcome food addiction to reclaim their energy and optimize their lives. Our holistic approach to coaching will help you find new realities of peace and ease in meals, movement, and mindset. Through creating a wellness vision, long-term goals, and weekly experiments, you'll find yourself creating a new life, all with the support and accountability of a trusted coach who has been through it. If you want to learn more about what we do, how we work with people to accomplish their health and wellness goals, or to set up your initial consultation, text us at 651-500-8162. Or, if you have ideas for the podcast or blog, know someone who might be an awesome guest, or even just if you want to connect more with someone who's been there, don't hesitate to text or email us at michael@coachkrug.com. Now, let's jump into the episode. We're recording? Awesome. So, welcome to the Inspire Life podcast. My name is Michael. I am your producer and co-host, and today I'm really excited to be interviewing Ann Blackburn with Tula Yoga and Wellness, correct?
Correct.
Got it. Awesome. So Ann, you are a certified yoga therapist, which I know a lot of our listeners would probably be interested in, but they also maybe don't know exactly what it is. So we're going to be learning more about Ann and what she does and about Tula. Before we get too deep into it, Ann, if you just want to start, introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. So we have Tula Yoga and Wellness is in St. Paul, and my husband and I own Tula, and my husband Dan, and we've had Tula for about 8.5 years. And we started Tula because we wanted to have yoga and wellness available to all. So whether, financially or physically, we wanted it accessible. And I've been practicing since I was 19. So when I was 19, I picked up a book from Yogananda, The Autobiography of a Yoga.
My favorite book. That is my favorite book.
Yeah. So when I was 19, which was like over 35 years ago, there weren't yoga studios back then. So I picked up this book and I was just blown away. And I started reading more and more, practicing, and it got me through some challenging times, especially that time of life, coming of age. And so I kept practicing, and like anything, the more you learn, the more it evolves. And and then back in 2009, I was certified as a yoga teacher. And since then, we opened Tula, and the practice that I was doing at the time up until that point, it wasn't a therapeutic approach to asana and yoga. And what I felt like it was more, we were kind of putting ourselves into poses, and it wasn't really agreeing with my body. So I found a practice through Yoga North, which is called Soma Yoga. And we created this partnership, and we started hosting their trainings. And through that process, I went through this 1,000-hour yoga therapy certification, and have been living this practice for the last 8 years. And I'm still amazed every day by what it can do, and it keeps unfolding.
Yeah, it's incredible. And before we get into yoga therapy and your practice, tell us a little bit more about Tula. You had mentioned is your whole center is it based upon donations for classes, correct? At least some of them, or?
Well, we originally started out as a donation-based fee structure, which meant that it was minimum of $5 to come in, and it's still that way. Minimum of $5 to come to a class. So we call it a flexible single payment. So anybody can still do that. But we also have other things like memberships and class passes. And so there's a lot of options that, depending on how often people come, or, they're financially where they are. And, some months it might be that people are doing the single payment and $5, and sometimes they might be paying more. So I like to leave it up to the person, and that way it makes it accessible.
Yeah, and that's so powerful, because there's so many people out there who want to try different things, and especially yoga. And if you're looking at maybe a different model, such as a core power, not everyone can afford to put down $150 a month to go practice. So I just love that you really pride yourselves on making it accessible in more ways than just financially too, right? You mentioned physically, and just having space for people to come and learn to practice yoga, because we know that it's such a powerful thing in so many ways. Like you said, even for practicing it for over 20 or 30 years, still having breakthroughs almost every day. So building off that, tell us more about what is therapeutic yoga? What is yoga therapy? And maybe how does it differ from what we would traditionally, most of us think yoga is just the asanas and the postures, upward facing dog, downward dog. So what's the difference? And just tell us more about yoga therapy.
Well, yoga therapy is a way for us to use the yoga practices for specific reasons. So let's say that somebody comes in with chronic pain. Well, pretty much anything, we're going to start at the nervous system and start calming the nervous system and teaching them how to retrain the nervous system. Because as we know, that affects everything, right? Affects every system in the body. And so with the yoga practices, whether it be breath practices, movement, meditation, so working with the mind and training the mind to have awareness and being able to really control the mind versus having it spiral out of control. Ayurveda, which is the sister science to yoga, and taking that approach where we're really bringing everything into balance. So with all of these various tools, then based on what the student or client comes in with, I can give certain practices. So we do practices together, and then I build a program for them to do at home and actually weave through their life, because it's not about just, going to the mat and doing a practice. It's about what are you, considering what you're needing each day for balance. So do you need more calming? Do you need more energizing? Do you need to take, are you overdoing it? Are you underdoing it? So there's just kind of a lot of things to consider. And so the movement's huge. We think of yoga as the asana, the postures. So that's big, right? We know that we need to keep moving, and movement's important. So that finding just the right movement for the person to have them get out of tension and being able to let the body move freely, and then build strength from there. So there's the movement, but then we've got many practices to choose from. So it might be meditation. It might be, teaching their mind to not spiral and come back to more of a calm focus or positive outlook. Yeah. So there's many things to choose from. And we do that in group classes, group workshops. We do that individually, one-on-one.
Yeah. Well,
what I'm hearing is that you focus on the nervous system to begin with, right? Because we know that there's 11 systems in the body. The nervous system controls itself and the other 10. And that so often we're in a sympathetic state, we're in overdrive. So coming back to that calming parasympathetic side of things. But then building off of that, you understand that we're whole beings with a lot of different moving parts and a lot of different things going on. And what you're doing is taking a personalized approach, addressing places in people's lives where maybe they're out of balance and they need to put some extra focus there to come back to balance. And then giving them options too, right? I mean, so many of us are extroverts and want to be in that group setting. So many of us are introverts and want to have just, personal one-on-one. So it's really, you're having a personalized approach for each person to really address what it is that they intuitively need to address to have a breakthrough and overcome, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain. There's a lot of different ways that those can show up, right? I mean, you can have emotional trauma from years ago that shows up as back or knee pain. So really just having that space for people to really lean into what it is that they need. It just sounds powerful. Awesome.
That's what we're doing as yoga therapists and teachers. We're holding that space and then empowering them and partnering with them to find that just right practice. And it is a relationship. It is a partnership. It's not something we're telling them to do. We're finding that together. And that's really important because my mission is really to empower people. And because it's really about them finding that works for them. And so Soma Yoga is that's an approach that we take, and which addresses the nervous system. So the Soma is somatics, and so the Soma Yoga is like neuroscience and the ancient yoga practices melded together. So we know you were talking about the nervous system. So we know that the nervous system affects our immunity, right? So when we're in that sympathetic or that fight, flight, or freeze, our immunity goes down. Pain goes up. If we're in pain, it goes up, right? If we're in that fight, flight, or freeze. Digestion is affected. Our heart rate, our respiratory system, everything is affected. So that's why we start with the nervous system. And the mind is a big part of that, right? Calming the mind. Right. So, and we're creatures of habit. So the habit, we are teaching them to unlearn the habits that might be affecting them negatively, whether it's the mind or the nervous system. And in that nervous system, when we go into that fight, flight, or freeze, our body goes into a reflex. And that reflex, which we developed as we were babies, we're developing that. It's called the Landau response, where we're kind of lifting the head and we're drawing back, right? That's shortening the back line, seeing the world. Then we learned the startle reflex, where we're drawing ourselves forward. So that's also our fight, flight, or freeze. So when we go into that fight, flight, or freeze, our body, whether we know it or not, is going into those reflexes. And over time, all those little reflexes, the brain says that's normal, and the muscles stay that way. So what we're doing in somatics is we're actually training the muscles to release and go back to neutral. So then the spine, the pelvis can go back to neutral. All the muscles can go back to balance, and all the other systems can go into homeostasis. So the immunity, the heart rate, respiratory. Yeah. So it's a really cool system where we get to actually retrain through the neuroscience, through the neuromuscular system, how to retrain those habits back to neutral. And then we look at okay, what happens when I start going into that fight, flight, or freeze? So we get that awareness to prevent it. Then we start going into preventing versus always going in and trying to retrain. So once we retrain those muscles over time, that becomes the new normal.
I mean, so much of what you said, there's so much wisdom there. And it's understanding that we are showing up as we are in whatever state, whether we're stressed out or anxious, whatever it is, and accepting with where that's at. And then, like you said, retraining or even like unlearning that there are things that maybe pushed us into being in that state and chronically feeling that way. And then knowing that there's a capacity to change. And then the kicker here, where, you and what Dr. Mel does is there's such a huge connection, is that you're not like per se a healer who's coming in and providing some sort of remedy or magical fix, right? No, your clients, the people you're working with, your practice members, they have to go in and do the work themselves, right? Because we know that true healing, and to be able to get back to, like you said, that neutral state, it needs to come from the inside and from the individual first, because we got there through maybe external stimuli that affected us internally. We need to go back and address that first to get back to that neutral. I think I'm kind of hearing that's what you're saying.
Exactly. So then when Dr. Mel does her amazing work, it holds better because they're doing the work of retraining. So if something's just done to you, often those muscles can go out of place, right? So it's a great, it works very well together. So when I'm working with somebody, I'm like one of a team. So if I see something where, they need a chiropractor, they need to go maybe to a psychologist, or maybe they have, acupuncture might be helpful, or massage therapy. There's a whole list of, or a naturopath or a doctor. They may need to go to a doctor, allopathic West. So there's, I have a scope of practice, and I'm really clear about that. And then I refer, and I have a whole list. And so you're one of those on our list. So it's important that we kind of know where that work comes together to support them, because we want to empower people, but we also want them to know they don't have to do it themselves. They're not out there alone. They have support, and just asking for support is a huge piece of that, we're here in relationship with people, and we don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, it's being able to ask for and recognize that you need help. It's a level of vulnerability that also opens the door to a lot of breakthroughs and healing on the other side. I do want to kind of build off what you said and ask, for myself and Dr. Mel or any of our listeners, what would be maybe something that we would hear or recognize within ourselves or within loved ones that would say, hey, maybe you should set up a consult with Ann over at Tula, because I think she'd probably be able to help you out with what you're experiencing. Does that make sense? Or what are people experiencing when they come in to see you?
Well, people come in if they feel stressed. They come in if they have pain. Let's say that they might be an athlete and maybe they have chronic pain and they want to kind of move through that so they're not, wearing their joints. We work with athletes. We work with people who are just wanting to feel good in their bodies. And they might be coming out of an injury. Maybe they've gone through physical therapy and gone the Western route. And then we support from there, because usually they just go to a certain point, and there's usually something that's led up to the injury that hasn't been retrained, and they could keep going into that injury. So a lot of people who are rehabbing, we work with osteoporosis. I mean, a lot of different, anything that's not a communicable disease. So anything that you can structurally, nervous system, people can benefit. plantar fasciitis. I mean, I see a lot of people with that and just feeling like they want to be able to get more out of their activities.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing too, and what it sounds like is that, because what you're doing is so much focused on the individual and it's all personalized, and you're recognizing that there's different methods and modalities for you and your relationship with your clients to practice, that there's a lot of different things that can be addressed because of this. And, coming back to our philosophy at Spare Life, when it comes to the nervous system, when we are constantly in that fight or flight, that kind of gas pedal down mode, there's a lot of different symptoms and there's a lot of different things that may come up that can be addressed with this more internal, right, nervous system first approach to help overcome it and find more peace and ease. I mean, we live in a society where, I don't know how you feel, but we're probably the most stressed out we've ever been, especially with contemporary events going on. And a lot of it just has to come back to focusing on, is this serving me right now? Am I willing to admit that I need to go and seek some professional help? And when you are ready, there's people like you who are there. And, obviously there's different things that maybe it won't help with, like you said, communicable diseases, obviously, but there's a lot of good that can come out of that.
A lot of prevention, right? And I think that people are just feeling like they're so overwhelmed, and these practices help you let that external and decide, what am I going to pay attention to? What do I have control of? What can I do? So practices, the foods, what are we watching? How much are we watching? So really focusing on that, and then noticing what don't we have control over, and then limiting that. And then knowing that you ultimately are the driver, you get to choose. And I think people really forget about that they have, when they have the awareness, and I equate yoga with awareness. When you build those awarenesses and discernment, then you can choose. Otherwise, it just feels like it's all being done to you. But when you can step back and build those skills of awareness and discernment, you then get to start choosing. And what's true for you. That's a big part of yoga is philosophy and truth, and knowing what's true for you. Maybe it's not somebody else's truth, but what's true for you, and being able to support that versus just going with the latest thing that's going on.
It's so powerful. I actually just had a coaching session before this with a client, and we talked about controlling the controllables, right? And then getting to a space with controlling those controllables where you are being, as you said, preventative, and as I say with my clients, being proactive, so that if something does happen, you don't have to go into that reactive fight or flight state. You're already ready for it to come about, whatever it may be, right? Obviously, there's a lot of things that have been going on, especially here in 2020, that have been, we've had to react to. But if you're already in a state where you are controlling the things that you can and doing your best with those, you're going to have a lot more peace and ease navigating through those stressors when they arise. So
we have really simple practices. Like it's not complex. It's simple. It might take a little while to just kind of get used to reframing and like, oh yeah, right. I can actually do some breathing and some focus in a different area. Over time, you're doing less of it. Like you have that homeostasis for longer, and but you're aware when you're out of it, so you can bring yourself back in. And there's a lot of things we can do, and that people have control over. So I like to it's building a toolbox for them, right? And that way they can just kind of bring out the practice or the tool that's going to work best.
Yeah, and like you said, empowering people to really be in the driver's seat and take control of what's going on with them. We're coming up here. We're almost on time. And I have the last question. So if you've listened to the podcast, you've heard this question. And for all listeners, they know that I asked this one. Our final question is, what is the one piece of wisdom, piece of advice, advice, information, what is the one thing that you want to leave our listeners with today?
I'd say the awareness, that to keep building those awarenesses and also ask support, because there's a lot out there. It can be overwhelming to come to somebody like us where we can distill it and pull out those pieces that can be efficient and effective, and you don't have to spend a lot of time doing it. And we're online. We're doing all of our classes and private sessions and workshops online. So I do private sessions online, so it's really great.
Yeah, tell us more about, how can our listeners get in contact with you? How can they, check out Tula and work with you? Give us some details on that.
Okay, our website is Tula, Tula, yogawellness.com. TulaYogaWellness.com, and that has all of our schedules, our services, and then under services is yoga therapy. And my contacts under there, my husband. We also do coaching and organizational wellness. So all of that information is on the website. And we just set up a Zoom like this. You just need a mat and some things around the house. And we do some intake and do practice. And then you get a home practice, audio, video, whatever works for you.
Awesome. Well, Ann, thank you so much for your time today. And even beyond that, thank you for the work that you bring to this world. I mean, I know just how you operate your business and your practice and how you work with people. You have an impact, right? We all have the ability to have an impact, and you just bring out the light in others. And it's been just a pleasure talking with you today. I'm excited to talk to you more too about the book Autobiography of a Yogi, because it's literally my favorite book of all time. So we'll have to process that. Maybe we'll have to have you back on at some point to talk more about that on the Inspire Life podcast. But I just want to say thanks again, obviously, for your time and everything that you do. And for all of our listeners, until next time, keep inspiring.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah,
bye. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Inspire Life podcast today. Please comment, like, and subscribe on whatever channel it is you're tuning in on today. Also, if you're on iTunes, please write us a review, leave us 5 stars. That way we can get the word out to more people who are looking for tips and strategies to improve their health and wellness. Also, don't forget to hop on over to the Inspired Living community on Facebook. There, Dr. Mel and I share all of our content to help you continue to live your most inspired and thriving life. And until next time, keep inspiring.